Hey, so before this episode begins real quick, I just want to say a huge thank you to the 1,000 new subscribers that I received over the weekend. At least at the time of filming this, it was over the weekend. It was G4's birthday. I just happened to post on Reddit thinking, oh, I'm going to get like 30 upvotes. I'll call it a night, whatever. I'm one of 10 people who care anymore. It's whatever. Next thing I know, I wake up the next morning, I have over 1,000 subscribers, and there were 36,000 upvotes on the post on Reddit about G4's birthday. I'm overwhelmed in the best way possible that you all are here supporting this channel and this content. I just want to say real quick, things are a little shaky right now with all the virus and everything going on. I'm flying solo. I usually do have a co-host. I'm experimenting with this episode. Some of you commented saying you should get a green screen. I'm trying that out this week. No idea how it's going to turn out, but so I apologize if the last episode you watched doesn't come up to par with this episode. But I just want to say thank you all so much. It means so much to me that you're all here supporting this G4 2.0, as I'm calling it. VGX7, video games times 7 days a week. That's what VGX7 stands for those of you wondering. But thank you all so much for being here. It means the world to me. I've been at this for a long time. This has been a huge goal of mine, and I hope to see it grow even more, get bigger and better. I try to improve every show, every episode. I try to take it up a next step. So thank you all so much, and without further ado, enjoy the show. Today on Ultima Gaming, grab your Buster Sword and materia as we save the planet in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Then run for your life in Resident Evil 3. And finally, we kick it old school in Trials of Mana. It's game time. And now, here's your host, a man long past the point of no return. It's Hunter Ginn. I'll never get over how handsome that guy sounds. Hello and welcome to Ultima Gaming. I'm Hunter Ginn, and on today's episode, we've got lots of incredible remakes for you to enjoy. First off, we're going to be taking a look at Final Fantasy VII Remake, a game that has been years in the making, and I'm happy to say was absolutely worth the wait. After that, we're going to be taking a look at Resident Evil 3's remake. Capcom really hit it out of the park with Resident Evil 2's remake, and let's see if they can keep up that pace with the sequel. And finally, we're going to be taking a look at Trials of Mana. This game is interesting because it was never originally released in North America back in 1995 on the Super Famicom. Therefore, even though it's a remake, it's actually going to be a first experience for many players. And we'll get to that later, but first, let's kick things off right now with the remake of Final Fantasy VII. The original 1997 release of Final Fantasy VII is often hailed as one of the greatest, if not the greatest JRPG of all time. And while that statement may hold true for many people to this day, the reality is, as time goes on, the game just becomes a little harder to look at. This is true for any early 3D game, unfortunately, and even a game that's hailed as one of the best isn't immune to eventually looking really rough around the edges. Thankfully, Final Fantasy VII has received a much-needed facelift and more in its remake, appropriately titled Final Fantasy VII Remake. What makes this remake so special is that the end goal isn't to be a one-for-one remake of the original, just with shinier graphics. Final Fantasy VII Remake looks to retell the story, with a multitude of changes, with things as small as new character interactions, all the way to major plot alterations from the original, which we don't get much into here. It's difficult to go into the story of this game much, especially if you've never played the original, but an easy service level explanation is you work for a group of activists trying to save the planet and take down a greedy, power-hungry company. There's much more involved with this game, both in the original and remake, but we'll leave you to explore that all on your own. Just know that if you've played the original, the remake greatly expands on a multitude of characters and environments, allowing you to see and access places that were simple backgrounds from the original. The same can be said for your teammates. Several characters who were seen as secondary or unimportant now play a much bigger role and have as much dialogue and exposition as main characters.
So, you know Tifa, right? It's not really my business, but are you guys close?
In addition to character and story changes, Final Fantasy VII Remake also greatly expands and changes up the combat mechanics. Rather than a simple real-time turn-based mechanic, the game is now more akin to an action RPG, having the player use real-time commands to fight as they wish. But this change in gameplay doesn't mean there's any less strategy involved in how you fight. There are many scenarios where close combat characters like Cloud are unable to effectively handle an opponent, forcing the player to choose carefully who they want to tackle a fight. The game also relies heavily on the materia system, which allows players to equip different pieces that allow for different techniques and abilities, such as a fire or lightning-based attack, as well as healing and summoning, to name a few. The cool thing about the system is that it's not limited to only certain characters, so you're able to customize any character to your liking, giving anyone whichever abilities you please. With gorgeous new graphics and cutscenes, the new soundtrack also features classic and new pieces that are sure to bring back a flood of memories for players of the original. Uematsu returns and has created some unforgettable moments thanks to his music composition that fans will surely appreciate for years to come, as they have with the original soundtrack. With so many amazing moments, both old and new, to experience in Final Fantasy VII Remake, it's difficult to put it all into words, especially without spoiling any of the new goodness. The fact is, this remake is something that we waited years for, and it's one of those rare occasions where the wait was absolutely worth it. So do yourself a favor, especially if you never played the original and want to know what all the hype is about. Go grab this game and see for yourself. Final Fantasy VII Remake gets a 5.
Oh, would you look at that? It's the end of the ride.
Out of 5.
So what could I really say besides, wow. The Final Fantasy VII Remake is everything we could have hoped for, and then some. The reality is, no one really anticipated it would be this amazing. And it's hard to give a super detailed review about it because there's so many cool things that I want to talk about, but I can't because of spoilers. But just go play it yourself if you haven't already. I think that's the only thing I can really say. Just go play Final Fantasy VII Remake. Or the original, because that's fine. It's hard to look at, but it's still fun. Coming up next, we're going to be taking a look at Resident Evil 3. Like I said before, Resident Evil 2's remake was phenomenal. It did an incredible job, it sold incredibly well, and was incredibly, just an all-around incredible experience to play. The question is, how's Resident Evil 3 fare? Let's take a look. Here is our review of Resident Evil 3.
With the massive success of Resident Evil 2 being remade, surely Capcom can manage to capture lightning in a bottle twice, right? Well, not exactly.
Right. How's that going for you?
Resident Evil 3's remake leaves much to be desired, from both fans of the original and newcomers alike. The remake for Resident Evil 3 plays almost exactly like Resident Evil 2, which sounds great on the surface, until you realize the two games just feel very different. Whereas Resident Evil 2 feels like a true survival horror game with an emphasis on using what little you have to make it through, Resident Evil 3 has a more action and linear feel to it. You aren't scrounging for ammo or carefully traversing the landscape, but rather trying to quickly get from point A to point B. Granted, the original Resident Evil 3 was more fast-paced than its predecessor, but something just feels like it's missing. For instance, in the original Resident Evil 3, there were branching paths mixed with different endings that were determined on your decision. Those branching paths and multiple endings are absent here, which takes away from the replayability value of the game. Speaking of replayability, one major issue with Resident Evil 3's remake is its length. The Resident Evil games have never been extremely lengthy, but Resident Evil 3 just seems extra short, only taking 4 to 5 hours to complete. This fact, bundled with a $60 price tag, just makes it difficult to fully accept some of these changes. In some ways, the game feels more like an extension of Resident Evil 2, rather than a true sequel. Granted, the plot of this game does run parallel to Resident Evil 2.
Speaking of which, the best part of the remake may just be Jill Valentine herself. Her new look, accompanied with her overall personality and attitude, makes her the biggest change from the original. Nemesis is just as terrifying as ever, only for the remake, he's not an ever-present threat in the way that Mr. X is in Resident Evil 2, but rather only serves as the occasional surprise appearance mixed with boss fights. To make up for the brief single-player mode, Capcom has also bundled in a new multiplayer mode called Resident Evil Resistance, which is a small but welcome addition. The gameplay mode features a 4v1 style, pitting 4 survivors against 1 monster. It's not an extensive or mind-blowing expansion by any means, but it's still a nice touch nevertheless. Overall, if you love the Resident Evil franchise and what it offers, Resident Evil 3 comes across as a nice, small, entertaining package. It could be longer, it could offer multiple scenarios, it doesn't offer the same appeal that Resident Evil 2 Remake has, but it's still a scary good time regardless. Resident Evil 3 gets an appropriate 3
Good work! Your reputation is well deserved.
out of 5.
Resident Evil 3. It's spoopy, it's fun, it's spoopy fun. It may cause a spoopy poopy. Not that I have that. Also, you probably noticed behind me this nice new studio. Don't ask me to go into it. This is about as far as I'm willing to stand. I don't want to, it's just, I'm comfortable here. I think this works best for me. Honestly, I really do. Coming up next is Trials of Mana. This game was never released originally in North America, so even though it's a remake, you've probably never played it, unless you happen to live in Japan or knew someone who could import the game over to you in the States, and even then, you had to know Japanese to have a clue of what was going on. And I highly doubt most of you accomplished that. So, without further ado, even though it's a remake for the first time, here's the North American review for Trials of Mana.
So, we finally made it to the last remake of this episode, and you're probably wondering, what's the big deal about this one? We've already got one JRPG remade, and there's no way that this one will top it. And while that may be true, the fact of the matter is, this game isn't trying to compete with any other, as the Mana games tend to sit in their own happy little corner. A simple action RPG, Trials of Mana was originally released in Japan in 1995, and until last year, wasn't available in the States. That all changed with the collection of Mana last year for Switch, featuring the Trials remake. This remake takes a beautiful 16-bit Super Nintendo RPG and transforms it into a colorful, visually stunning 3D adventure without losing any of the original charm. In a way, Trials of Mana reminds me of Dragon Quest. Its vibrant colors and more simplified story compared to many JRPGs out there give it a simplicity that's easier appreciated by more general gamers. To experience the full range of the story the game has to offer, you'll need to play through the game 3 different times, as you get to choose your main character, which will then impact who gets the spotlight and whose story gets fleshed out the most. But at its core, the plot is a simple, good guys save the world against bad guys. Combat is one of the more unique and fun aspects of the game. Just like the original, Trials of Mana features a real-time combat system, allowing you to freely roam the area and approach a fight from any direction. While this is pretty much the same for the original, the remake has added a dodge roll, making one simple addition to the combat a very large improvement. In some ways, the combat is similar to Final Fantasy VII Remake, where you can also pull up a menu, slowing down time to allow the player to make decisions and strategize their next move. Trigger buttons can be used to quickly swap between characters, allowing all sorts of combos and unique ways of handling enemies. Speaking of strategy, Trials of Mana has its own strategy system that allows for players to customize AI behavior, letting them play to their own strengths and not waste certain moves or resources without player approval. As your characters grow in Trial of Mana, they'll earn ability points which can be spent on one of 5 different stats, allowing each character new abilities and moves as you progress, with some abilities being able to be shared between characters. There's no auto-optimization here, so you'll have to carefully craft each character to your liking and hope for the best, which can be tedious at times. Trials of Mana also offers a New Game Plus mode, allowing players to revisit the game with their items and abilities in stock. This is a great way to experience new sides of the plot, as the new game will allow you to pick new characters. All in all, Trials of Mana is a great remake that will offer a fantastic, classic action JRPG experience for many first-timers and newcomers to the series. It's a simple RPG, short by most standards, and easy to follow. But that's not a fault by any means. If anything, it makes it more accessible to those not super involved in the JRPG genre. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. Trials of Mana gets a 4 out of 5.
All three of these remakes featured today were fantastic games that anyone should try out. It's going to welcome a whole new generation of players to these games, and it's just going to open up a wide possibility. The video game industry really as a whole has been doing a phenomenal job with remakes. Unlike Hollywood, who's actually been sucking at it, the video game industry is really thriving off of remakes right now, which is just incredible. There's so many 3D games from the 90s that hurt. They make my eyes bleed when I look at it now. But to have a nice high-def remake on the PS4 or even the upcoming PS5 maybe, or the Xbox, I think it'd be a really cool thing. I honestly have no objection to a lot of these remakes that are coming out because I just think some of these games aren't the easiest thing to play or have access to these days. So let us know what you think about the remake revival that we seem to be entering. But real quick, I just want to say I'm filming this about 2 days after this all happened. The channel, in my mind, in my eyes, exploded over the weekend. I've been doing this channel for 5 to 6 years now, probably even longer than that. VGX7's goal, if you're new here, first of all, just welcome and thank you for being here. The goal of this channel was always sort of, let's be the next G4. The channel blew up thanks to that post on Reddit, and I know a lot of the comments were talking about, well, I hate G4, but Tech TV was awesome. I fully understand. I have no problems or issues with Tech TV. Reality is, without Tech TV, there wouldn't have been an X-Play, which is what this very show is based off of. So when I say being the next G4, I also kind of mean Tech TV as well. I have no problem including the Tech TV family here with VGX7. But if you're new here, Ultima Gaming, this is going to be the X-Play show, essentially. So by all means, check out some of the older episodes. Things are a little weird right now because I don't have a co-host. With all this quarantine, coronavirus stuff going on, I'm flying solo right now. I have no idea how this episode's even going to look. I'm going to figure that out when I'm editing later today. I have no idea how this is going to turn out. I'm flying solo right now, so I apologize if the episode you came into seemed better than this. But really, I just want to say thank you all for being here. It's incredible. I'm overwhelmed in the best way possible. It's just awesome. It's just awesome. I hope to create tons of new awesome shows for y'all with lots of new amazing content. All sort of that recapture that feeling that Tech TV or G4 captured for you back in the day. So again, thank you so much for watching. You can also, we're on Facebook, Twitter, VGX7, VGX7 TV. We're also on Patreon, patreon.com/VGX7. You can go there, really help support the show financially so that I can keep making newer and better content for you guys. So with all that out of the way, thank you all for watching so much, and hope to see you again soon.